I am back, guys. Sorry for the interruption. So let's start where we left. We were talking about lists and squares, and we have talked about list, len functions, and we are talking about in and for loop now, and squares. And then let's say sum equals to 0. Look at this step very carefully, guys. When we run this code, we should see 20 plus 10, 30 as the output. Let's say you can see 30 is the output because we are adding everything. You can see in operator will take everything that is inside this square list, and sum is 0, but we are adding the value of num, that is each element of this square in this list, and then we will get 30 in the end. Let's talk about if statements. Let's say we want to print something that is inside in this list. Let's say, let's write me down. If for in squares, then we will do print 4. Let's see. You can see 4 is getting printed. Why? Because 4 is in the square list. We can also print whole squares if 4 is present. And now let's see. One, 4, 9, 16. The whole square is getting printed. Okay, this 4 is length of the string, length of the list, sorry. So do not confuse it with this 4. This is the another 4. Let's talk about tuples now. That's all about lists. Let's talk about tuples. Just like a list, a tuple is a sequence of values. Normally, the various values inside the tuple are usually indexed by integers and can be of any type. The main variance between tuple and a list is that tuple is actually immutable while lists are not. Moreover, tuples are hashable and comparable, which means you can actually sort lists of tuples and use tuples as important values in Python dictionaries. Let's write a tuple. Tuple 1. We can create a tuple by this: A, B, C, like this. You can create a tuple without any writing square brackets or something. It is a tuple. We can even print it out. You can see ABC are getting printed, and you can also notice they are in simple brackets. So that is another point. You can also define tuple by like this. Just like this, you can also define tuples. it is tuple 2. Let me print it out. When you print this way, you know what, it is easy to identify how many elements are there in the tuple, and it will be easier to look at each element. You can easily see the length, but if you just writing commas and other things like single quotes, it becomes kind of messy. So let's print. Output should be the same. You can see they both are having the same output. Even though it is not necessary to include parentheses, but it is more visible this way. If you want to find the type of this tuple, we can write type, and you should see the message on the screen as tuple. You can see class tuple, it belongs to class tuple. And if you want to have only single element tuple, you can also have it tu1, let's say 1. It is only a single element tuple. Let me print the type for you guys so you can know whether it is actually a tuple or not. You can see it is a tuple. There is also alternative to print the tuple and to define the tuple. We can also have something like this. If you want to have a null tuple, you can have something like this: t equals to tuple. It will begin the tuple, and we can print this t, but there is no element inside, so you should see an empty bracket. You can see an empty bracket is on the screen. Since tuple is a name of constructor, try it not to use as the name of a variable. If you do it that way, then you will get a syntax error saying that you have used keyword or something like this. So it is a good idea to use tuple as the variable name. And slice operator is also applicable in tuples, just like in strings, like this. Let me try this one because it has more elements. From one index till the end, let's see the output. You can see only one is getting printed. No, only BC is getting printed. A has been omitted because we have been counting indexes from 0, but in this case we are starting from 1, so that's why it is the case. Now next thing we are going to look at is dictionaries. Dictionaries are a compound kind that is essentially different from the types of sequence we found in list, strings, tuples. They comprises the inbuilt mapping type of Python. They map keys to different values. You have to note that in computer science, dictionaries can also be referred to as associative arrays, symbol tables, and maps. The pairs of values are known as field value, key value, name value, or attribute value. Now we will create an example to make you understand the dictionary better and how the key value will work. So let's start. Let's say English to Hindi conversion, and to define dictionary we will use curly braces, and in our dictionary we are gonna assign 1 to ek. Ek means 1 in Hindi. Now let's have another element. Let's have 2 two means do in Hindi. I can either use double quotes or single quotes, it is my choice. Let's use double for this one. So it is the second element, and to see the type of the dictionary we can have something like this. We should get class dict, something like that. Yeah, exactly, class dict, because it belongs to class dictionary. And suppose we want to get the one value out of the key, let's do it like that. Print we should pass key value, and we should get ek as the output because it is the value. You can see ek is getting the print. Ek is getting printed out on the screen. That is the output value. We have passed the key and we have got the output as value. That's how dictionaries work. Commas are used to separate the dictionary key value pair. Each pair has a key as well as a value that is separated by a colon. The exact organization of pairs may not be necessarily be as you might have expected. So there might be some differences in the order that in which elements are appearing. Let me print this dictionary for you. Let's print this, and we can see 1, ek, 2, do. They are separated by the comma and you can see it. What if we add some more elements? Let me add A and let it assign to A. You can see it is getting appended in the list and it is still separated by the comma. So, and you can also see this colon is there. That means A is the key and this is the value on the other side of the colon. Now let's have some dictionaries operations. Let's see it. You can delete one key or value from the dictionary by using something like this. You can have del and then dictionary name, and what you want to delete, put it here. It will get deleted. If you see now, we do not have any one in the dictionary because it has been deleted. So that's how it works. We can also check the length of the dictionary just like we have done with the list. It should print 2. Let's have a look. Yeah, I was right. It is getting printed as 2. You can also check by using in operator to see if there is a key in the dictionary or not, like this. Let's say A in and to in. Let me write it in the if clause. I will talk more about if clause and other clauses in the next part of this video. I won't be creating a separate video, but in this video only I will be having a talk about if and other parts. So let's have a look at this one. We will print yes. Let's have a look. Yes is getting printed because A is in the dictionary. But if we say B is in the dictionary, it won't get executed. You can see yes is not there while it was there previously. That is the difference when some element is not in the dictionary. Now let's have a look how we make decisions in Python. Decision making. Decision making is the anticipation of conditions that occur as program is executed, and also the specifying of actions taken with regard to the condition. In a program, decisions are used when program contains conditional choices to guide execution of a code block. For instance, traffic lights have different light colors that light up at different scenarios according to the road conditions or any particular rule. And the decision structures assesses different expressions that produces either true or false as the outcome. Let me give you some of the decision making statements we have in Python. We are having if, else, we are having nested if. Now we are going to look at each of these carefully. So I have already explained you if condition. You can see if v is in this, then it will print yes, or otherwise it won't print yes. Now let's have a look at else condition, and you can see it was not printing yes, and then it was not printing anything. But if yes is not the case, then what should be the case? We can specify here. We can print no. Let me clean this and see the output. You can see no is getting printed on the screen. It is the example of if and else. And for the nested if, we can have another if inside this if statement. If a into hin, then print a is here. You can see first it will execute B part, and it is not the dictionary, so it won't be executing this part because it is indented. And inside this block, inside this first if block, there is another if block, so we are getting no as the output. But if we want to print this A is here, we can have something like this. Let's say if 1 in the into hin, and if A is into hin, then we will print A and 1 is here, both are here. So let's use R in this case. Oh, I have deleted 1, so it is not getting printed. Let me comment this statement out. In Python, we will use has to comment these statements like this. So you can see now. You can see A and 1 are here getting printed now, because 1 is in the dictionary and A is also in the dictionary. So that's how nested if statements work. Hope it is clear to you. If you still have any doubts, you can leave in the comments below. Now let's talk about loops in the Python. Next thing we are going to talk about is loops. Let me clean this screen and let's start. Loops are a very important part of Python, just as much as they are in other programming languages, because they aid the repeated execution of a code block. As a programmer, you will come face to face with situations where you will have to use some bits of code repeatedly, but you do not want to put down the same line of code many times. Generally, statements are executed in sequences. The first statement is a function is executed first, then followed by a second one, and so on. As I mentioned, you will have situations where you have to execute a block of code a couple of times. Programming languages offer you different structures of control to enable execution of more completed paths. Loop statements give us the opportunity to execute a statement or collection of statements many times. So let's start with while loop. We are having three loops: while loop, for loop, and nested loops. So let's look at them. First we are going to look at the while loop. The while loop is one of the first loops you will definitely come across when you are learning Python. It is arguably the most intuitive one to comprehend. When you look at the name loop, you will understand pretty quickly that the other word while has something to do with a period of time or interval. And as you obviously know already, the word loop refers to a piece of code you execute in repetition. Having that in mind, you are ready for the definition of the while loop. A while loop is a concept of programming that, when implemented, executes a code repeatedly as long as a particular condition still holds true. You may be able to see three highlighted components in the definition of the while loop. First, the keyword while is there. Second, condition, something that is false or true. And third, a code block that will run the logic. Let's create a while loop in the Python. Let's say number equals to 2 and you print while num is less than 5. Then you will need to write your block of code what you want to do. If this condition is satisfied, then you will print thank you, and you can increment this thing this way. So let's say what we get. We are getting thank you 3 times, because first time it is 2, second time it is 3, third time it is 4, next time it is 5. So condition is not being satisfied because 5 is not less than 5. 5 is equal to 5. If I write equal to here in this assignment, then we will see it 4 times. You can see thank you for 4 times now. That's how while loops work. Remember, it can be an infinity loop also. If I comment this statement out, you can see it will always be less than 2. 2 will always be less than 5, so it will be an infinite loop. I will tell you how to tackle this problem shortly. But now let's have a look at for loop. You can approach the for loop the same way you did with while loop. As you may probably expect, the component for loop in for loop refers to something you perform for a given number of times. With all in the consideration, let's have a look at for loop definition. A for loop is a concept in programming that executes a piece of code over and over again for given a number of times according to a sequence. Unlike the while loop, here we do not have any condition actively involved. You only need to execute code a number of times repeatedly. In simpler terms, as the while loop continues to execute the block of code present within it only until the condition is true. Does for the for loop execute the code present inside it just for a particular number of times. The number of times I'm talking about is settled by a sequence or as an organized list of things. Now let's have a look at for loop. So for loop is consists of 4 components. Actually 5, because we are also having the range. First is for keyword, and then in keyword, and then your code what you want to do, and then a variable, and then finally the range function, how many times you want to print something. So let's have a look at it in action. For num in range. Let me say it num2. It is the variable name we are having, and for and in are keywords. And let's have a range 5, and then we are having our code. What we want to do if this condition is satisfied, and how many times we want to repeat this condition. Let's have a look. We will print thanks again. Let's have a look. You can see thanks again is getting printed 5 times. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, the 5 is not included in the range. It is exclusive. Otherwise it would have been printed 6 times. So now let's have a look at nested loops. You can try including more while loops within your current code, which is referred to as nested loop. Let's say we are having this while loop, and we can also have a condition like this: while num is greater than 3. Let's have this condition. We will print num this time. Let's have a look. You can see it is infinity loop. Why it is infinity loop? Because every time when number is incrementing, it is already greater than 3. So how to make it more sound? You can put less than, then it will only execute one time, I guess. Oh, we are not incrementing the number, so it will run forever. Let me add the incrementing block. Num plus equals to 1. Now let's have a look. Let me write this statement in the upper while loop also, because we are having both the loops, so we need to increment in both of them to make it a finite loop. Let's have a look. You can see thank you, thank you, thank you is getting printed 3 times, and then thank you is getting printed again. Why this? It is because of this. Because firstly it is not less than 3, so this statement is not getting executed. So let me make it equal to 3, because we want it to perform it at least once. You can see 3 is there. If I put it only less than 3, then 2 plus 1 is 3, which is already not satisfying the condition, so it won't get executed. So now you can see 3 is getting printed only once, because it is only one time. 3 is there. After that everything is above 3. So that's about the loops. Now we should look at loop control statements. Python will support the control statements that are used to control the loops, and these statements are again 3. What are these statements? Break statement, continue statement, and a pass statement. You can use these statements. Break will be used to break the loop if you encounter any infinity loop, as we have encountered last time, and then continue will be to carry on, and then pass will pass something. Actually in Python this kind of statement is used when a statement is syntactically needed, but you do not want to execute any code or any command, so then this pass statement will come into the play. And continue makes us to skip the loop, the rest of its body, and retest its condition immediately prior to reiterating. That is the work of the continue loop. And for the break, this one ends the loop statement before transferring the execution to the statement. So that's about the loop controlling statements. Now let's have a look at functions. What are user defined functions? We have talked only about str as of now. It is not user defined function. Let's have a look at user defined functions. So as I've written str, it is already predefined in Python. These are default functions that comes with the Python package. Now let's have a look at user defined functions. In Python, to define functions means getting to know both user defined and built-in types of function first. The built-in functions are typically a part of Python packages and libraries, while the user defined functions are creations of developers looking to meet the particular requirement. All the functions in Python are treated as objects. This makes Python more flexible language when compared to other high-level languages. Importance of user-defined function is that the function that are user-defined can act as third-party library for developers and other users. Depending on how and when they are used, the user-defined functions have the advantages like the user-defined functions are simply reusable block of codes that you only need to write once, but you can use many times. You can use them in other applications as well. These functions are extremely useful, from writing specific business logic to common utilities. That is the second advantage. You can also modify these functions as the requirement. And let's have third advantage. The code is particularly easy to maintain, well organized and developer friendly when we use user defined functions. The next advantage would be, since you can write the user defined functions independently, the project task can be distributed for quick development of applications. And last advantage would be, user defined functions that are thoroughly written and well defined generally ease the process of application development. Let's have a look how we define user defined functions. Let's say we will write def required. This is our requirement function, and we will write str and num. It will take two arguments, and then we can have something like this to call the function required arg for the str we are putting hello, and for the num we are putting 2. If we run this code, we can see we are getting indentation error because we have put this colon here, and we need to have something in this function. We need to do something with those things. This function should return something. Let's return 1. If we return 1, we can see return 1, and then we will also print this. We are not printing it. You can see 1 is getting printed over here. This function will return 1, but in most of the cases you won't need to print something, because you just need to return and pass the arguments. When you program, then you will come to know about these things, like how to have these things. What is the importance of returning something instead of printing it, because you will call this function from another function, and then the value will get used there. As a software engineer, I've seen it happening many times. So how to call the functions and how to have the var args or other things. To call the functions, you just need to write function name and then pass the arguments. That is how you call it. But we also have something as var and args, and those kind of things are done like this. Let's say we are having def var len arg function, sort for function, var list, something like this. We'll put a star over here, and then it will iterate through that list and then print the values. So to call this kind of function, you need to pass the values like this, var len func, and then you should pass your list like 50, 60, 60, 70, let's make it 80, something like this. You need to pass the var list something like this to get your output. Now let's have a look at some more important topics. Let's build some program. Let's have a calculator program. This will make you understand the concept much easier. Here you also need to use input methods. You need to use input from the users, and let's have a look at it how we do that. To calculator, we are building a simple calculator to make you understand what we have studied till now. Let's have num1 equals to input. To get input, we just write input in Python. You can see Python language is very similar to the English and it is easy to understand. Enter your first number and then num2, input. We will take second number here, enter your second number, and we can see if we run this code, we are getting this, and it is prompting us to give us first number. If we give 5, it is getting recorded, and enter your second number. Let's have it 10. Now we have sent our input to the Python program and it has stored those values in the variables, and let's have more operators because it is a calculator, so it should at least add, subtract, multiply or divide. So we will do these kind of things, something like that. For addition, we will have something like this: num1 plus num2, it will add, and if we check it now, let's check our addition function, 10, and then we will write 20. Oh, it is string concatenating them because it thinks we are taking input as a string, so we need to specify we are taking input as int. So make sure to put int at the beginning of your program, or beginning of the input in statement. Let's have a look now. You can see enter your first number, let's say 1, let's say second number is second. We can see 3 is as the output, that is the sum of 1 and 2. For the subtraction we can have something like this. This let me make it for addition and division too. For subtraction, for multiplication, for division. You can also use user defined function to make it more dynamic. You can use something like addition function. You can def add addition, something like this, and then you can call first num1 and then num2 and other kind of things, and you can define it will return num1 plus num2. You can also do it like that. This way you do not need to kind of do these things outside in the print statement. You can do these things internally and then return the output after writing the functions. But I'm using to make this video more simpler, I'm only using this kind of thing. This is for addition, this one is for subtraction, this one is for multiplication, and last one is for division. So let's have a look what it's gonna do to our numbers. Let me print add with it. Add output, add out. Similarly we can have sub for subtract, and it is for multiple. Let's write it mul. And for this let's write div, so for division. Let's have a look. You can see the output we are getting now because it was previous, and if we run it again, let's say 20, let's say 10, you can see addition add out is 30, subtraction is 10, 20 minus 10, multiplication is 20 into 10, 200, and division is 2.0. that is because if you divide 20 by 10, then you should get 2. You can also add conditional statements in this. If you want, if a statement, else statement, and other kind of things, you can do these kind of things. Now let's begin with other topics. what topic should we begin with? Let's have shallow copy and deep copy. From what you already know, data types and variables, you know that Python is different from most other programming languages, especially during the copying and assigning of simple data types such as strings and integers. The difference between deep copy and shallow copying is especially visible when compound objects, the objects that contain other parts such as class instances and lists. The code that I'm going to write will tell you how it happens. Let's say x equals to 3 and then y equals to x. However, even with this, internal behavior appears strange compared to other languages like C, Perl, C++, but Python is easy. Then you can Python only builds real copies if it has to, if the programmer, the user demands it explicitly. Unlike C language or C++, Python does it only when the user demands it, otherwise it won't do it. So let's have a look. Color, that was with only single variable, and let's do it with double variable with let's do it with a list now. Color red and then green, and then we have color 2, let's take it equal to color 1, and let's have color 2 equals to rogue. Let's have another color. I like to have word. And now if we print color 1, you can see the output. It is red and green. This example shows a simple list being assigned to color 1. The subsequent step will entail assigning color 2 from color 1. Like you can see, we are assigning color 2. We are assigning color 1 to color 2. Let's have a look what will happen if something changes. Let's print color 2. What should be the output according to you? Guess, and let's see what have you thought is correct or not. You can see this value of color 2 is getting overwritten. First we have this and then we have this. So the values, as we have told earlier, if you change the variable value, then it will be overridden. So you can see rogue and word as the output. But if you look at the color 1 again, color 1, you can still see it is red and green because we have not made a change in this. But if we do something like this, let's have color 2, first element, second element is 1. Let's say if we say it to blue, then you can check the output. It is blue there. You can also iterate it like that. So let's have a slice operator now. And now this is the shallow copy that we have talked. Now we're going to look at deep copy. So for deep copy, we have to have list inside a list. you can see list 1 A B and then AB, let's say BA. And for the deep copy we need to import this statement also. From copy import deep copy, and let's have a list 2 deep copy list 1 list 2 second row first element equals to D, list 2 zeroth element or first element, zeroth index first element, we are having C. And now let's print it. Let's see what will we get. You can see here clearly, first it is A B A B B A, and then it is C B A B D. That is the change between list 1 and list 2, because we have overridden the values here. So that's how keep deep copy work. Hope you have understood the difference between deep copy and shallow copy. Deep copy will copy all the data, but it is also modifiable like shallow copy. But shallow copy can't be used in these two-dimensional kind of things. So that's why deep copy comes into the picture. So now have a look at recursion in Python. Recursive is an adjective organization from recursor, a Latin verb that means running back. That is what recursive function or a recursive definition does. It is simply returning to itself or running back. If you have done some math, read something about programming, or even done computer science, you must have come across the factorial, whose definition can be defined like this. For the factorial we have something like this: n factorial equals to n into n minus 1 factorial, or if you want to calculate n minus 1 factorial, you can have something like this into n minus 2 factorial. That's how factorial works. It will just keep on appending until it is 3 to 1. Till 1 it will just keep appending. So what is the meaning of recursion? Recursion is a technique of coding or programming a problem where a function is calling itself once or many times in its body. Typically it's taking back this function call's return value. When a function definition is fulfilling the recursion condition, you can refer to this function a recursive function. In summary, a recursive function in Python is one that calls itself. So far you have seen numerous functions in Python that call other functions. Nonetheless, as simple example, it is possible for functions to call themselves. Let's have a look. Let's have num equals to 0, and then def. Let's have main function, and then counter num and then let's define counter function here. Num plus equals to 1 and then counter num. You can see in this function the counter is defined here, but it is calling itself here. So let's run this. What should be the output? It would be endless because it will just keep on incrementing. If you want to see, I can just print it for you. You can see it is just maximum recursion depth increases because it was a infinite loop. You can see if I run it, it should first give you some numbers and then it will just infinity loop. So this IDE stand itself and then it will stop. What is the meaning that we want to convey by this? It is simply a function that is calling itself. That's what it is. Counter is calling counter. So that's what recursion means. So that's how it happens. It is very useful in factorial and other kind of things. We can also have loop or something. We can make it a limited function. We can put if condition like this. If num greater than 100, let's say, then we can terminate it. My settings have been changed. Let's run it. We can't even use break because it is not a loop, but still it is infinity. So to show you, I have put it here. It is neither while nor for or nor while for. So that's how it will get done. But if his statement is not getting executed because counter is calling itself again and again. So let me put the if statement in the beginning. Let's have a look now. You can see done is getting printed. But it has stopped executing because it is infinity loop. So that's all that I wanted to talk about, you guys. I have also explained recursion to you, how you can create infinity loop without even using a loop. It will just run infinitely because there is nothing to break it, but you can have some logic. If you do not want to call it again and again, you can put something like this, num minus 1, then it will be a finite. Let's have a look. Let's put num to 10 and have a look. It is still infinity because we are incrementing num, so we should decrement the num, then it won't be infinity loop. It is negative infinity now. So to stop this being infinity loop, what we can do is we can use recur and another function. How many times you want to loop, counter is 1, and then we can have something like this. Let me show you guys how to stop the recursion and how to have a great way to use recursion. Let's define another function. I will show you with this. Let's have loop num, because we are treating recursion as num. Let's have int, remember to include int input. In the input we will put how many times we want to run the loop, and then let's have counter. Let's have 1, and then we will have recur. It is our recursion function, and then loop num first argument and counter as second argument. Let's define recur function now. Loop num counter if loop num greater than 0. We could have also stopped that loop by using this condition. We were decrementing, we could have used 0 or something, but I wanted to make sure that you should see how to use different loops in the same loop. This way you will understand it more clearly. This what we should print here, guys. Let's print loop iteration, and then counter, and then we will decrement it, and then we will increment the counter, or else we can print the loop is complete. I hope this won't be infinite loop. Let's check it out. Let's run the function and see what will happen. Oh, equal to 1. How many times we want the loop to run? Let's run 10 times, and then you can see loop iteration 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. That's why I choose a different example. So thank you watching this video, guys. Hope you love it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you again.